Okay, welcome Shane Roberts to the Biodigital Convergence Transhumanist Report, man. I'm glad you took the time to discuss Derek Reimer's case. I've seen a little bit of what you're doing online, and I respect what you're doing, right? You're definitely a voice for the people, and I deeply respect and appreciate people that are willing to intelligently and respectfully take a stand against authoritarian governments. So welcome to the show. First and foremost, let's read Derek's bio. So he is the founder of Mission 7 Ministries, a Christian street outreach that feeds the poor each week in Calgary's downtown since 2016. So wow, that's awesome. He also formed a protest movement in late 2022 called Exposing Darkness. Its objective is to protect children from programs and propagate transgender and homosexual ideologies. So, yeah, especially in Canada here, yeah, you're going to get the force of government sanctioned religion, is what I call it. It's sad to say, but people on the other side of the spectrum, right, are being persecuted by our government, which is completely wrong. It's unconstitutional the way I see it and illegal. Um, but again, this is what we're here to discuss, and I hope bills I think of Bill C9 and what they're trying to push through, right? Because their goal is to criminalize hate speech, and they get to define it so they can go after people like, of course, Derek, myself, or anyone that basically is outside of the parameters of how they define, acceptable speech. Anyway, I digress. So Shane Roberts, welcome to the show. Also Derek, I'll just give he is married. He has a 13-month-old son, and he's a 39-year-old man down in the Calgary area there, right? So I respect Derek. I think he's a powerful force, right, against the darkness in this country. And now on to Shane. So Shane Roberts, short bio here. He's a former air navigator, Royal Canadian Air Force, and a critic of the judicial system since 2021. You can find his commentary and analysis on Facebook page Radio Shorter. I believe you're also on YouTube too, so I'll throw the link up there for people to check out what you're doing. And a quote I pulled was off his Facebook page here. I thought it was great. This is quote, analyzing the descent of what had been a more free and just Canada into a nation governed by authoritarian rule. This deterioration of representative democracy has been driven by censorship, speech codes, and the criminalization of liberty. So that's a quote from his Facebook page. So, okay, Shane, welcome to the show. Yeah, that gives the audience a little bit of a idea of what we're talking about today. And this leads us to our first question. What's next for Derek? Because he's gone through a lot of legal issues right now, right? So what's next? And I heard he has a breach of hearing on February 24th. That's coming up pretty quick.
Yes, tomorrow morning, Calgary Court Center Court of Justice will be what's known as a breach hearing. It is a criminal trial, and we will discuss what that stems from. But what we're looking forward to is seeing celebrated and storied defense lawyer Alan Hepner confronting the judicial system tomorrow morning. He now has the reins. Derek has been capably represented first by defense lawyer Ben Allison and then by a junior lawyer, Andrew McKenzie. And all parties have agreed at this juncture, and especially for this breach hearing and moving forward, that Alan Hepner is representing Derek. That's tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Likely we will proceed to docket court, where the courtroom will be assigned for this breach hearing. We're going to have a rally outside the courthouse, 8:30 in the morning tomorrow, 24th of February. If you live near or in Calgary, please be there to support Nick Reimer.
Absolutely, yeah, no, 100%. I'm up in the Edmonton area here, but I mean, I've watched, yeah, it's good. It's really important to support guys like him because they're standing up for. I look at guys like Derek, like he stands up for biblical morality. I call it the biblical moral compass, and essentially, this is my view, but our government, especially here, has pretty well rejected that, and it's a battle between who gets to define morality, right? Of course, you have the biblical tradition, and morality is it's the highest standard of morality I've ever read. Like when I read the New Testament, at least, it's the highest standard, right down to your thought life. And then it's, of course, when he's advocating for that on the streets, right? Like you get, the feathers ruffled of those who are in complete opposition to that, right? And that's what's happening with Derek here right now. And they're trying to use the system against what I'm going to say his religious convictions, which to me is completely wrong, like 100% wrong. So, okay, what are the allegations?
Okay.
What's actually, yeah, let's talk
Yeah,
about
they
that.
start with five. They've narrowed it down to three allegations. I'll
Okay.
call it bogus. I give them no weight from a legal perspective. Of course, I have to observe them because, as insane as they are, and insanity in the sense of just a complete detachment from reality,
Hmm.
these are allegations. Number one, that he refused to submit to state compelled speech. This was Justice Karen Molly who convicted him of criminal harassment based on a peaceful 90-second conversation,
Okay.
gave him a sentence, which was 1 year house arrest to be followed by 2 years of probation. The 1 year house arrest is defined by what's known as a CSO, a conditional sentence order. And its many points included that Derek, at the close of this 1 year house arrest sentence, would have to write a letter of apology to the alleged victim of criminal harassment, which is strange in all kinds of ways. One of his conditions is that he may not have direct or indirect contact with the library manager, and in the same CSO, right?
Hmm.
They're asking him, forcing him, compelling him to have direct contact with her to write a coerced letter of apology. Derek Reimer has ably argued against that in what's known as a variation hearing. And
Hmm.
he presented a fine argument along the lines of, this is state compelled speech. You're asking me to reverse
Yeah.
my, I pled not guilty. I didn't plead guilty. This is a de facto admission of wrongdoing. And Derek cited Section 2 of the Charter, that this goes against his expression of his beliefs,
Yeah.
his opinion. So that's allegation number one. State compelled speech. The constitutional, the JCF, the Justice Constitutional Center. I'll apologize for butchering that acronym. They have gone further to say not only is it state compelled speech, state compelled thought, and of course, we now are very capably landing in the realm of George Orwell's 1984.
100%.
The second
Yeah.
allegation of breach is that on a day he was due in the courthouse, he gave a 3 minute interview to Angelica of Rebel News.
Okay.
That is ludicrous beyond words, but it mirrors a similar allegation of breach, which I'm sure we'll get to talk about. But I'll go on to the breach allegation. The third one is that in a social media post, he included the words library manager. And according to Crown and his senior probation officer, this was a clear reference to the library manager, the alleged victim of criminal harassment, and it constitutes indirect communication. Of course, they have no proof that she even read this. But so there you have the hat trick of three bogus
Yeah.
allegations. And tomorrow morning, we're likely going to see Alan Hepner's storied defense lawyer ably unpack these in the courtroom in front of the gallery, in front of the
Hmm.
presiding judge, who will not be Justice Karen Mullen. And as far as I know, it's going to be a Justice Mason tomorrow morning. But there are your three allegations of breach, meaning that he violated the conditions of his 1 year house arrest.
It's just, yes. Thank you for that, right? That's well said. Like you put that together in a real logical way for us to understand. Like, and yeah, like I know well the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, right? Like I can't, yeah. And you know what? I caught what you were saying, right? I follow what they're doing. Thank God for people and groups like them because yeah, like I mean, this is what's going on in Canada right now is not like okay. At the very least, we need to find some balance here, okay? Like no matter what your views are, like you can't it's really out of balance right now. And of course this case shows that. I wouldn't even want to I don't even understand how you could even support the people that are prosecuting and coming against Eric. I mean, it's like these people have their own belief systems and you can't even see your own hypocrisy in that, right? Like that's what I really don't understand. And to me, if if I was a judge, I would just this whole thing would be thrown out. Like this is ridiculous. And yeah, but
There,
I'm not the judge, right? But
there is there is a mindset in the Canadian public that as long as the outcome is what they want, they don't care what it's doing to justice. They don't care what
Yeah,
principles.
exactly.
And I
100%.
partly goes to a lack of critical thinking as well. They're just not thinking clearly. And that's frankly, that's the great thing about a man like defense lawyer Alan Hepner. Yes, it's my understanding from
Hmm.
Derek that when Derek and his father sat down and met with Alan, Alan
Hmm.
was raising his eyebrows, listening to what the Crown has been up to, and said that I respect your convictions. And Alan Hepner
Hmm.
may have different ideas about different
Yeah,
moral aspects and so on. But defense lawyers are really good at being objective. And even if they have a client in front of them, well, I don't agree with this and this and this, but it's
yeah,
my job to defend him, and I can see where the Crown has strayed. So that's objective, critical
yeah.
thinking.
I get it. And if we're going to uphold freedom, like the way I think you understand it, we need to be of the way that you're discussing, right? That's the thinking we need to have. But it's disturbing to see, like when you have bold men, like Derek Reimer's a bold man. It makes me think too of Arthur Pawlowski. I mean, they're bold men. They're passionate about what they believe in. And yeah, it challenges the system, right? And like you just said, people share different convictions, different beliefs, but the fact that this has been brought to and for me, like it's a battle as to who gets to define what's morally right from wrong. This is what I see this case being about. That's what it represents. Is it the Canadian government? Is it a Bible believing Christian? And I mean, you're seeing this clash, right? These are my comments on the matter. And if you want to preserve like freedom of religion, well, you're encroaching on Derek Reimer's constitutional right to practice, to me, freedom of religion. I mean, it's yeah, like he has every right to protest against, like, look at all the protests going on in Canada, right? So he's protesting against things that he considers to be immoral. And to me, in my view, that's 100% acceptable as far as I'm concerned. Like
Well, yes, there's all kinds of protests that are permitted.
Mhm.
We mentioned Antifa. Antifa tends to be in support of whatever the government policies are. We saw that during the
Yes.
COVID era. Antifa would show up to rallies. My first rally that I attended in 2021, and
Hmm.
that's why I use that year as sort of my
Okay.
uh, call it a point of departure from being a keyboard warrior on social media since 2014 to now it's time to be a part of this. And there were all
Yeah.
kinds of reasons I was drawn to it. But as Art Pawlowski gave us a brilliant summary of history, Antifa stood there fully masked, their backs towards us. And that day there was some violence that they
Mhm.
carried out. They threw punches, they drew blood. Calgary's finest did nothing about it. In the sense of there were no charges. There were no charges.
Okay.
They went through a bit of some fancy footwork trying to keep the Antifa ambushes as we came around the corner of City Hall away from us. They did that capably. But when it came to two acts of violence, they're, oh, well, you're not really that bleeding that bad, are you? Because Calgary's finest understands Antifa's establishment. Antifa is there to represent the voice and will of government policy. And today, the problem with protest in Canada is when it is protesting government policy. And we heard that reflected in the basic dictator Justin Trudeau, that he considers it's worrisome to me. It is worrisome the idea of public protest aimed at changing government policy. He said that. That's you can consider that
Hmm.
a throne speech. A man who often ruled by decree. The things he said were
Yeah.
implemented by the beat cops on the ground here in Calgary. When he says this fringe minority, these people coming
Mhm.
to Ottawa expressing incorrect views. Well, there you have the complete departure
Yeah.
from a free and just society. It's not the state's business to determine which views are correct or incorrect. And
I
so then
agree.
young, I believe it's Josh Alexander, if I'm saying the name right, the Catholic high school student from Ontario who was thrown out of school for disagreeing with the idea of boys his age going into the girls' washroom. He's in Calgary being physically pushed. Today it's known as assault, pushed around by Antifa. Calgary's finest show up to detain him, to handcuff him, to tell him that your ideas create hate events, your ideas are incorrect. So there you have from the prime
Yeah.
minister right down to the beat cop, no legislation required. No changes to the criminal code required. So Justin Trudeau has decreed that yes, it is impossible to have your views incorrect. Well, of course, that's the meaning of political correctness from the get-go. It implies that it is possible to be politically incorrect as in the eyes of the state. This is a complete upheaval of Western civilization's democratic principles. Magna Carta, British common law, the American Declaration of Independence, and the three pillars of liberty. You mentioned the word freedom. Yes. So freedom, for me to define it in the political legal context, free speech, freedom to associate, freedom to assemble. Freedom to associate has been dead so long in Canada, people don't even remember that. They don't even think about freedom to associate. It's just a given. If you have the wrong associations, you will be fired. You will lose your job. You will be
Yeah.
publicly.
Oh, that Shane, like the way, man, you should run for office, buddy, because I would vote for you. The way that you articulate things, no, it's really good. It's really good. Like I agree with you 100%. Like you've got a lot of good knowledge there, so you've been around. I appreciate your voice actually. This is relevant. Like this is where the battle's being fought in this country. And the sad reality is that see, the Trudeau Liberals have really normalized behaviors, and they've changed the system over 10 years of liberal policies. To me, it's really changed. Like I'm 44 years old. I was born and raised in this country, and the way that it's dramatically changed. And how do you do it? Well, you do it through the schooling system, right? You do it through the universities. You normalize things that it's I don't know. It really makes me sad, right? And I've kind of checked out, right? Like with where we're heading as a nation in terms of Canada. But go ahead, Shane. Yeah, that's I want to hear. I've lost your voice there. Okay, there you go.
You mentioned the universities. I'd like to come back to it because this
Sure.
revolution started on the campus. I was there in the
Yeah.
late 1980s when we began hearing about political correctness. But to go back to this breach hearing tomorrow, if we go back
Yeah.
to the conditional sentence order, the 1 year house arrest, a conviction of criminal harassment, well, where does that come from? And by the way, it's parallel with another set of charges in another library called Seton Library. And this was on the 25th of February in 2023, early 2023. I've been interviewed by the CBC. They never used the footage, but the question was, why are you guys complaining about drag rating? This has been around forever. Well, that was news to me. This is something they really ramped up during the COVID narrative. And so by 2023, the lockdowns have ended, but now we got drag queen shows in bars. We got 8-year-olds be taking to bars so that a man in a negligee can perform with them. That's what's going on in Calgary, and Calgary's finest, meaning Calgary Police Service, is there with their gun and their badge to make sure that it happens. And Derek Reimer begins peaceful, effective protest, which he calls exposing darkness. And in early 2023, he shut down more than a dozen of these events that were spreading from the domain of the public libraries to private businesses and, of course, bars. And so the state pushed back. The state pushed back. And at a Seton
Yeah.
Library, two bogus charges of mischief and creating disturbance. A Justice Fradsham, about a year and a half later, found him not guilty. So that was another stream. But because double jeopardy is possible in Canada, that 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 exoneration, that acquittal was appealed by the Crown, and Justice Nancy M. Carruthers overturned the acquittal in the King's Bench. And so Derek faces double jeopardy. He's going to be retried for mischief and creating disturbance in April. That's important. There's a context here. There's stuff going on because when Derek was arrested on 5 bogus counts of breach and spent a few days in jail before Christmas, the Crown was hoping that he would stay in jail pending his trial in April. There are
Hmm.
subsections in the criminal code that have to do, well, what's the context of a man who's breached a CSO? Is he facing other criminal trials? And so that was the argument to keep him in jail. But the justice overseeing that matter, James Sawa, disagreed, but put conditions on Derek Reimer that have the effect of amounting to kind of a Soviet bloc era Marxist muzzle. That's why I'm here today. Derek Reimer is not permitted to appear on social media because the state, meaning the government of Canada, is terrified of his message, of his ability to expose what they've been up to. But I want to go to the criminal harassment trial. So now we're moving forward. And bear in mind, Derek Reimer has been arrested 5 times in the last 3 years, 111 days in remand center.
Mm.
111 days incarceration, and there's been a series of bail hearings and an arc of ever increasing conditions aimed at muzzling him, getting stop talking to the public about what we're up to. That's basically the intent and effect. So now we have another criminal trial based on a 90-second peaceful conversation with a library manager in Saddletown Library. And I'm going to move through that very quickly. Within
Yep.
a week, he's arrested by Calgary's finest. This is a complete and total exception. If you look at the case history of typical criminal harassment charges, it takes the police months or years before they do anything for the woman who's been targeted by the systematic pattern behaviors of predatory male. That's what criminal harassment law is for. The state has used it to punish free speech. A peaceful 90-second conversation. So that's all I'm going to say about that. It was on Derek's body camera. He went into that library with that camera rolling. Why? Conscience of innocence. Conscience of innocence. 90-second peaceful conversation. There wasn't even a complainant. The library manager never contacted the police. This was done on her behalf by a direct or indirect employee of the city
Mhm.
security officer of Saddletown Library. Third party complainant. That's not how the justice system works, but it's working that way now because of the way they're bending due process. There was a moment in the trial when Ben
Mm.
Allison was the defense lawyer pointing out, Your Honor, if we look at the subsection here, which I believe was 2 Bravo, repeated direct or indirect communication with the alleged victim under the context of this behavior is causing that person, that alleged victim, to fear for their public safety, reasonably fear for their personal safety in all circumstances. And he points out, Your Honor, the statute threshold is repeated. This was a one-time conversation. Crown Prosecutor Matt Delatovich requested an adjournment. He came back with precedent for altering the dates of the charge with that, which at that moment had been on or about the 27th of March. 2023. And of course, Justice Karen Mawley, who is in league with Matt Delatovich, agreed to having him expand the dates from the 27th of March to the 4th of April so they could cast a little wider net and try to come up with some dopey, there's no other word for it, a dopey constellation proving pattern behavior, which included a message on Facebook Messenger by a third party that this Crown doesn't even know who this person is. That's how removed it is from
Yeah.
Derek. And then the fact that he made a Facebook post and uploaded the recording of his visit. So there's their 3-point pattern. But it's like the Crown didn't even bother to go there. I've just got one 90-second conversation. It doesn't matter that the statute says repeated behavior because I'm sure the judge will just go along with it. This is the warping of the statute, the diluting of the threshold. So she allowed it, and they threw together these, this this bogus pattern that is all hinging on a 90-second peaceful conversation. So much I could say about that, but where we
Mm.
land is in late 2024, Justice Karen Mawley convicts him of criminal harassment. Then we moved to the CSO, which also had strange wording when it had to do with the terms of Derek's employment. He's a individual private drywall contractor, and Justice Karen Mawley required him to submit certain schedules, had to let the probation officer know a week in advance. And Santander Palmer, the senior probation officer who eventually took over Derek's file, Derek has weekly visits with him, a parole officer. He really ran with that and put up roadblocks. It cost Derek tens of thousands of dollars in potential earned income. So the combination of a wonky CSO as far as employment goes, and then a biased probation officer who has the militant pride flags up in his office
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
brown chevrons. Folks out there, we've gone beyond the rainbow. Okay, folks, look at the black
Mm.
and brown chevrons. That's a militant flag. And one of the things Santander Palmer did is he actually committed to writing in a periodic report, we must break down Derek Reimer's traditional views. He committed that to writing. And there you go. That's lock and stock with state compelled speech, with compelling Derek write an apology letter, which amounts to admit you were wrong, admit you were guilty, Oh, and by the way, go ahead and directly contact the library manager, even though this contradicts what any actual victim of criminal harassment would want. No victim of pattern systematic predatory male behaviors would want to hear from him. And the reason I'm not mentioning her name is she's now a victim of the state. She's now being abused by the state. She never made the complaint to the police. She was dragged into this by a library manager. Yes, she was responsible for programming and scheduling Reading with Royalty. I'm not sure what she thinks about that now, 3 years later. She was so reluctant that she refused to give Crown Prosecutor Matt Delatovich a written victim impact statement for the sentencing hearing. Your Honor, this is a surprise to me. I was expecting a victim impact statement. It hasn't arrived. Apparently, I'm not getting one. She didn't want anything to do with it. So I've stopped using her name. The
Okay.
state and the state and party media or state media, they keep dragging up her name anytime they want to talk about Derek Reimer. They're the ones who are harassing her. I'll admit that doesn't meet the threshold of criminal harassment because I'm an objective, honest critic. But they are harassing her nonetheless, and I refuse to be a party to it. So I no longer name her. I'm happy to name the Crown, Matt Delatovich, Justice Karen, Acting Sergeant Howie from the Hate Crimes Unit, the players who were part of this debacle, this absolute prosecutorial misjustice. So that's the background of how we've landed with a 1 year house arrest. It's interesting that at the bail hearing, Justice James Sawa, who let an innocent man go home at Christmas time, although with the Marxist muzzle in place, so he's sort of hedging his bets as a judge, not too zealous for political correctness, but he's aware. He's aware of who's buttering his side of the bread. I always butcher that metaphor. But my point here is he looks at the CSO, how it was written, and he's like looking at what Justice Karen Mawley wrote in terms of Derek's work conditions, he's like, well, this is written. This is weird. How this is written. We want to encourage these men to work. So there you have a fellow judge in the Court of Justice admitting that my
Yeah.
sister, Judge Karen Mawley, apparently didn't want him to work. We want men on bail to work. We want men on house arrest. That's part of their reformation and
Yeah.
integration into society. So I will point out that if we go back to the month of April, Derek Reimer appeared in front of the courthouse on a day he was due in court. He doesn't need to ask Santander Palmer permission to be in court. It's a given in his CSO. You will appear on days you're due in court. Derek has never missed a day in court. He's there in front of the courthouse steps. And 1 month later, the Crown, in conjunction with Santander Palmer, in league with the Hate Crimes Unit, they cook up a breach charge that preceded this current set of breach charges that he was, by appearing early on the courthouse steps and engaging in a preaching ceremony. That's the real crime. That was the word Matt Delatovich used. That was the word Hate Crimes Unit used. That was the word Justice Karen Mawley used. That was the word Justice Shaw, who was overseeing that breach hearing, used. A preaching ceremony. Here you have the de facto criminalization of the Christian faith.
Yeah.
So they cook up this charge a month after the fact, and they arrest him 1 day before he is due in court for his own appeal. We won't, yeah, we'll get him out of the way, throw him into jail based on the fact that he showed up early at the courthouse. There were so many bogus arguments the Crown gave on this one. One of them, well, Your Honor, if he had been inside the courthouse, if he'd been in the cafeteria or outside the courtroom. Oh, okay, so you're saying he could have preached a sermon there and that would have been okay? What they're saying was the courthouse steps aren't part of the courthouse. What they're saying is if you're an hour early, that's a breach.
Mhm.
I don't know. Do you know of any other jurisdiction on the planet? And we know the other nations of this world have their problem, but we don't
Yeah.
see a federal police force saying after a mass murder at a school in the interior of British Columbia in another
Yeah.
jurisdiction, we're not going to hear them saying the gun person. Oh, you mean the gun person? We're not going to hear them say, yeah, our alert that warned the people there was a female gunner on the loose. That was correct. The gun person is female. And you're not in any other jurisdiction, even UK, with as crazy as they are, the attitude of the police to a Derek Reimer would be, well, we know what Derek will be that day. He's not going to miss his court date. He'll be there early, right on the courthouse steps. We don't have to worry about him. I'm sorry, this is Canada. To my mind, the most perverse and corrupt government on the planet. at this moment that we're speaking.
I
I
agree.
can't
Yeah,
imagine a jurisdiction that's more perverse and insane in its thinking. So
I
there you
agree.
have criminalization, they call the preaching ceremony. In front of Justice James Saul, a Crown prosecutor was careful not to use that terminology. He didn't call it the preaching ceremony. But they had set this precedent that you have to be inside the courthouse or you're really violating. I mean, I can't even make sense of it.
Yeah.
But now they're saying so. Now he gives a 3-minute interview to Angelica later on at another court session. After another court session, it's inside the courthouse. I saw him giving the interview. He was inside the entrance foyer way of the courthouse. What is Matt saying now? Well, he's inside the courthouse, Matt. Oh, he outstayed his welcome at the courthouse. Where is that written in the criminal code? Where was that written in his CSO? On a day you're due in court, be sure to not outstay your welcome. No, what they're upset about is he's talking to media. He's talking to the public. He's talking about our corrupt and perverse government. That's what they don't like.
Well, that's what's going to happen. I mean, when to me, how they've handled his case has not been with wisdom. And this whole thing, they should dismiss it. It's like, let him go about his business, right? That would be better for them and more wise to me than what they're doing now. It's only going to be, the more and more they come against Eric to me and persecute him, it's going to amplify his story, and the world's gonna hear it. That's for sure. Because again, like you said, I agree with the level of corruption and I call it the DEI, the rainbow flag religion. It's a state-sanctioned religion. Like they have more protection, of course, right, than a Christian Bible-believing man because they know that our faith comes in direct opposition to what I'm going to call their faith and their belief system because it's a belief system. They have their belief system versus I'm going to call traditional Judeo-Christian like a biblical person, like that has a high standard of morality. And when you start reading, which Mark Miller knows very well, he doesn't like what's in there. Okay, yeah, okay, you don't like what's in there, Mark. Well, I don't like what you're doing either. But the difference with them is that they're trying to table bills, right? So they can criminalize people like Derek and myself or whoever. So they can send, you know, Edmonton's finest or Calgary's finest to come and arrest you on hate speech. Like this is how it works. Like this is their game. It's lawfare, right? It's lawfare to me.
A police officer could say, no, I'm not going to follow out. I'm not going to follow that order. I consider that an unlawful order. Uh, I met
Okay,
re I met recently with a retired sergeant of Calgary Police Service who was dismissed during the COVID era for his refusal
good.
to go along with what, in a legal context, has been proven to
Yeah.
be ultra vires outside of the law. That was Justice Romaine's decision after the COVID narrative. But years before COVID, he saw the writing on the wall. He was in training, and in some sense, that implies setting standards for police officers. He was counseling new recruits. In a few years, you're going to be making some difficult decisions whether you do what is right or you follow your orders. He was already seeing the writing on the wall. I'm thankful my era in the armed forces, it is at a time when, in certain ways, it is in decline
Mhm.
for reason budgetary cuts by the liberal governments through Chrétien, but also the growth of political correctness, which is now on the campus and will eventually spread to all branches of government, starting in decline, but still carrying with it traditions of honesty, loyalty, integrity. That's what we were taught at Canadian Forces Officer Candidate School in Chilliwack back in 1993, also known as boot camp. We were taught do not obey an unlawful order. And if you move a few years later into my training as an operational navigator on the CC-130 Hercules, that's a four-engine transport aircraft.
Yeah.
I'll never, I'll never forget the day that, as a student in training during a flight, setting what is known as a gyro compass by using a sextant in the region of magnetic unreliability, i.e., up there in the Arctic. And the errors were off the chart. And yet I said, well, I'm just going to go through with this and set the gyros. And so they were wrong. And my navigator instructor went through it. Shane, you saw errors on your half-hour check that were beyond what you normally see. You should have realized there was something wrong. I found the error in your calculation. And he looked at me and said, Shane, never go with something that's wrong. And I can
Like,
remember, you know, having to call radar unserviceability right when we're given our takeoff clearance, leaving home base, and let's get going. This is the mission. Let's get moving. We're almost at the button of the runway, and I've gone through the radar check, and the radar is coming up unserviceability. And this is sort of this is a failing in my own character, is the reluctance to speak up that my Air Force training brought me through. You don't want to be that guy that says, hey, we have to abort this takeoff. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Here's the procedures. You got an unserviceable radar. You can't leave home base with an unserviceable radar. So I just say on the intercom, left seat nav, radar unserviceable. Oh, okay, nav, thanks. And they go out to tower. Hey, we need a few minutes to sort some stuff out. Don't go with the thing that's wrong. You can't leave home base with an unserviceable radar, especially if you're heading into the Arctic. Don't do it. Don't do with what's wrong. And that's what we're doing here in Canada. That's what we're doing here in Canada. We are mutilating adolescents by altering their sexual primary and secondary characteristics since in a 5-year period that ramps up during the COVID narrative. They're killing people by saying you can't have heart surgery because we got to keep you safe from COVID, and they die from that criminal medical neglect. But the private chop shops, as I call them, that were carrying out radical double mastectomies on girls between the ages of 14 and 18, several hundred over the last 5, 6 years. Those were ramping up during the COVID era. They were increasing their numbers. Business was thriving. And we call this mutilation, which for a number of reasons tends to target girls more than boys, we call it gender affirming care. I'm sorry, not even Nazi Germany went to the depths of that level of deception and hypocrisy when it comes to the programs they wheeled out for their own people, including T4, which for those who don't know was basically that's the Nazi version of Canada's Maid, but Canada's Maid is much worse. So this goes to what I'm saying, how disturbing our government is in this country. Don't go with a thing that's wrong. That's what Derek Reimer has done. He stood up against what is wrong. That's what Art Pawlowski did. He stood up against what was
Yeah.
wrong. And go to an earlier point you made, absolutely. The more pressure the state puts on these men and women
Yeah.
of courage and conviction
Yeah.
in an attempt to silence them, it has the opposite effect because it tells them they're right when
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
you're revealing how wicked
Yeah.
you are. It's a little bit like, and this is attributed to Gandhi. I assume he said something like it. When the policeman beats you up, you've won because you've
Yeah.
provoked the tiger to bear its rotting, corrupt fangs.
That's that. Yes, man. You should be running for political office. Like, I really respect just the way you articulate, the way that you express the knowledge that you have is excellent, Shane. Like, I have to say, hats off to you. And I really, yeah, like just the way. I don't know. Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm impressed, right? And I'm glad like Derek has you like as an ally on this, right?
I,
It's
you know,
it's
I've Derek, God bless him, as I'll just say it plainly.
yeah,
He has fundamental Orthodox Christian views. There
yeah,
is nothing of that legalistic attitude or spirit in him. I have
yeah.
seen him walk into the front lines where Antifa is carrying out minor acts of violence, and 30 of us protesters are virtually surrounded by 200 trying to reach out to some of these people on the front line, and you get this weird, I call it demon speak, just this weird inversion of logic. You can't reach out to them, you can't talk to them. Here comes Derek sauntering in with this a little lightweight portable microphone system. Jesus loves you guys. I'm here to tell you Jesus loves you. Don't go to hell. I've made mistakes. I was on a path similar to yours. I'm just here to, and that evangelical, I'll call it that simple evangelistic message that is
Yeah.
often dismissed. That was a breath of sunshine. That was sunshine. That was a breath of fresh air coming into that very tense moment of protest. That would have been Saturday,
Mm.
March 4th, 2023, in the wake of what's known as the Safe and Inclusive Access Bylaw passed by former Mayor Jody Gondik's regime, which actually targeted a specific type of protest. So now we're saying this protest isn't allowed because of its content.
Right.
Complete
Yeah.
violation.
Yeah. Exactly. That sets a precedent, doesn't it? Right.
And you might know the name Larry Heather. He challenged it. He spent many weeks trying to get arrested. He couldn't get himself arrested. Finally, he gets arrested for being within 100 meters of a library that's doing one of
Okay.
these reading sessions that they call reading with royalty. And he does this in order to go to trial and have a constitutional question launched within the framework of the trial, overseen by a Justice Barley, who agreed, yes, Larry Heather, your freedom, your charter rights, your freedom of expression, Section 2 rights were violated by the Safe and Inclusive Access bylaw. But you know what? It would cost us too much money to hire the police to be there to make sure the two groups are separate. So we're just going to go along with it. So even when a judge admits they're violating our free speech, it still doesn't matter. And the joke,
Yeah.
it would be a joke if it were not so deplorable. In fact, there's all kinds of bylaw and police resources they use every time. There's a reading with royalty session to make sure that it happens, to make sure the grooming session is carried out. And it's not, it's grooming, it's indoctrination, it's putting the minds of those children from the age of the stroller up. They have stroller parking right near the event in the shrine, the adult programming room, where a man in a wig and a dress and lipstick gets little toddlers to play dress up in front of him. That's an encroachment on Section 153 of the Criminal Code. I've mentioned this to two or three police officers. They don't care. They won't have that discussion with you.
Like
No,
I'm glad you brought up a point. I'm just going to jump in with that the officers can say, like, I like how you brought up in your training that you can say that I'm not doing this, because I certainly would not be doing this. I would want nothing to do with Derek Reimer's case or being ever a part of arresting him or anything, because like I believe like he has every right to protest against this child grooming. It's just, why are we normalizing this type of behavior? And it's facilitated by the leadership, right? All under, to me, the banner of like what I'm going to call the rainbow flag religion, government sanctioned. And I mean, you guys need to start recognizing, like, honestly, it's like you can say, oh, it's my job, but it's like, guys, like, do you really want to be counted as someone that stood up against like a guy that stands with like biblical morality against, to me, the lawlessness of like I'm going to call it the rainbow flag religion. Like it's completely immoral. Like who gets to draw the lines, man? What if it was your like some of these officers or your son, your daughter sitting in front of a trans guy in a negligee? Are you okay with that? Is the question I would ask those officers, right? Are you okay with that? Because I certainly am not. And that's our right to say that I am not okay with this. Like, why are you guys coming after people that are saying we don't want this? Like, that's like, well, in America, right, a lot of this stuff is being pushed back on now, right? Because it's just completely out of control. It's where do you draw the line?
you have to understand, and we're seeing the videos of adults
Yeah,
or even a teenager going to the school, pushing back, giving a passionate and articulate and logical speech in front of the school board trustees, whatever they call that down there in the States.
yeah,
In Canada, they'd call the police and you'd be arrested. So that's the difference right now between Canada and
yeah,
America. It can be done in America. Here in Canada, you'll be arrested and they'll call that mischief. And we've seen videotapes of that in Canada. You're going to have to leave, sir, because, well, actually, this is mischief and you're interfering with their just by being there. So that's how it works in Canada, And I
yeah.
said I wanted to talk about the universities, but before I do that, let me just go to
Sure.
the
Yeah.
mastermind of Drag Queen Story Hour in
Yes.
Canada. UBC professor Harper Keenan, he's responsible for public curriculum in British Columbia as a professor and celebrated drag author and drag reader Little Miss Hot Mess. He got the name right, Mr. Mess. He's making a mess of children's minds. Now, I've gone in after Derek was arrested at Seton. Some months later, I went into Seton Library, video camera rolling, library manager lying to me. By then, I had, in a previous library, gone in and videotaped all the books they had on display, all geared towards transitioning children to the opposite gender or sex, like Aiden, the brother who was really a sister, or Little Miss Hot Mess's book, The Hips of the Drag Queen Go Swish, Swish, Swish. So I go in there, where are the books on transitioning? Oh, no, we don't have that. That's not true. We don't have that. And then he takes me to the stacks where the book is
Hmm.
because they put it out of view, right? So I went and grabbed it, went to the adult section, videotaped it, talked about it. By
Yeah.
then, Calgary's finest were on its way under the tactical command and control of the library manager, who on the phone, when I'm near the shrine asking questions, is there's one of them here right now. We'll discuss when you get here. In other words, Calgary's finest, when you get to the library, this apparatchik of woke ideology will have command and control. So he sent them in to intimidate me where I was reading, and they come walking in with the gun and the badge.
Oh,
And
of course, yeah.
I was done. So I not to be discourteous, but I just ignored them and walked by, talked to
Yeah,
another officer in the hallway, and he refused to have a discussion with me. But my point, that's why they're there. They come in to show the badge and the gun to let you know this is happening. The grooming of children is happening, and it's indoctrination. And
it is.
listen, you can go online and look for the playful practice of queer imagination in early childhood, and you'll find the article written by these masterminds, UBC Professor Harper Keenan, Little Miss Hot Mess. They use the words drag pedagogy. Good for them. That's honest. That's what this is. It is drag pedagogy. And drag is code for transitioning to the opposite gender and or sex. That's what it is. They also twice in the body of the essay and in the endnotes, they use the phrase reading to filth. Oh, well, Shane, you've taken that out of context. Here's the context. Here's an article all about reading to children, Drag Queen Story Hour. They admit it's drag pedagogy, and they've twice inserted the phrase reading to filth. That's what they think of our children. That's what they think of our cisgendered, heteronormative children. That's why they're doing what they're doing to them.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
yeah,
it's
go
and
no, go ahead.
it's okay. No, go ahead with that thought. I'll
Oh no, like it, I mean, it's absolute, it's perverse, it's disgusting, it's despicable. It's absolutely an abomination. And that's like no wonder people like how can you as an officer like, you know, I don't even understand. Like for me, I could not take part in that. There's no way. No way. Yeah, fire me. Good. I'm done. Like I mean, there's yeah. I mean, I can't understand you can't tell me you're doing your job. No, this is not you're actually like an officer of enforcement for perversion that our leaders are allowing to spread, and I'm against this, right? 100%,
so let,
100%.
let's go to the complicity of police officers. I'm going to say this was September, I believe, of 2023, the Million March for Kids in Calgary, organized by Mahmoud Murrah, a member of the Muslim community. We had a showing of about 5,000 people,
Hmm.
predominantly Sikh, Muslim, and Hindu communities. Some of us were,
Okay.
if you representing European descent and perhaps our Christian heritage. And Calgary's public safety unit, this is another unit that with in league with the hate crimes unit operates like a Sicherheitsdienst, to use the Nazi German term, SD, meaning an organ of pure state security, meaning no, it's not about public safety, it's about the safety of the regime and its
Yeah.
ideologies and policies. They're not a real tactical unit, they just pretend to be. So they put on the gas mask on their hip and they've got the metal reinforced punching gloves and the assault rifles. And there they are, bravely standing along a skirmish line to face off with Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim children on the sidewalk who are passionately saying, leave us kids alone, regards
Yeah.
to safe and caring policy, rainbow curriculum, SOGI,
Yeah.
all the gender expression and gender identity indoctrination of children. And Mahmoud Murrah paid for this. The hate crimes unit showed up on his door. There were charges. There were bogus arrests. There were threats. Why are you hanging out with the freedom movement? They're all white supremacists. This is our police officers in Canada
Yeah.
lying through their teeth in an act of intimidation. And I would call it criminal intimidation. If you look at the statute for criminal intimidation, it is an offense to prevent something from someone from doing something they are legally entitled to do, or try to coerce them into doing something they are legally entitled to abstaining from without lawful excuse. I hope you're listening, Calgary Police Service. Having a badge and a gun and a uniform is not a lawful excuse. You are
No.
outside of the law when you intimidate Mahmoud Murrah and threaten him with arrest for organizing peaceful protest. You're rogue.
And yeah, I mean, I have to agree. Of course, anyone that's standing up for like this is the fact that we're even having these types of conversations is just unbelievable to me. And I attribute a lot of it to well, they had that first action plan. I'll include it in the write up here, right? The Trudeau government, there was this LGBTQIS or whatever the alphabet numbers are today. But there's an actual action plan, right, of how they're going to push this into all the workplaces, the schooling systems. Like it's been done. Like, and
It,
then now, yeah, this is
it's
the
hard.
outcome of it, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it started in the Vancouver School Board in May of
yeah,
2014. That was
yeah.
its thing. It spread like
Everywhere
wild.
you go.
So I hope I've established for me, and I have a lot of common ground with Derek that includes matters of faith, but it
Yeah.
is especially pushing against an agenda that sexualizes children, grooms them, gets them to feel normalized to be around us in a stranger who has his sexual proclivities on display, and do what he says. Sit on the floor and change your clothes in front of him. Put on the little
Mhm.
queen outfits. And by the way, in his book, The Hips of the Drag Queen Go Swish, 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 Little Miss Hot Mess writes, as a dedication to the children, to all the little queens in training. So there you have it, drag pedagogy, drag training, drag conditioning. And they're putting these young minds on a track so that when they're adolescents and the guidance counselor says to them, tapping into their normal teenage angst, as horrific as that can be, especially for some adolescent girls, you need to identify as the opposite. That's been happening for years now in this country. And they're setting them on the track for the surgeon's knife. I mean, we
Yeah.
could talk about what top surgery and bottom surgery looks like for a girl. It's horrific. These are the Joseph Mengeles of the Canadian healthcare system. Let's not fool ourselves. These
Mhm.
doctors are carrying out lucrative routine surgeries for them. If there's an
Mhm.
infection, the hospital will deal with it. If this person commits suicide 10 years down the road, oh, well, that won't be on him or her. These are the Joseph Mengeles of the healthcare system. That's what I'm standing up against is the mutilation of
Okay.
children in the name of gender expression and gender identity. Where does this come from? Let's go back to the late 1980s when the philosophical ideas of Jacques Derrida, French scholar, are being hijacked by activist groups coming into the humanities department. Deconstruction talks about the binary constructs day, night, male, female, and it deconstructs them. The first thing it does is it reverses the demarcation. There's your drag. That's what transitioning is. We're going to reverse the demarcation that is rooted in biology. Gender,
Mhm.
yes, has cultural elements, but it is a linked parameter to sexual identity. That's why they're trying to alter it through these gender affirming surgeries. So the lies and contradictions of gender fluidity theory, the dopey religion of the state, you got that right, Tom. This is the
Yeah, that's
dopey
what it.
of the
Yeah.
state. Derek Ryan,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
heretic to our zealous pseudo religious state. It's a contradiction. They're saying, well, gender has nothing to do with sex, has nothing to do with biology, but we'll go ahead and surgically remove and otherwise mutilate your primary and secondary sexual characteristics so your biological presentation matches your gender. Well, there's a contradiction in terms right there. They know it. They know that gender is linked to sexual identity. So they reverse the demarcation, but that's not the end state. The end state is the deconstruction of the male and female into a post-national, post-humanist,
Yeah.
bio-digital, gender-neutral,
Mm.
impotent, gender-neutered state. That's what we have a big transhumanist head downtown Calgary that sits right in front of the Bow, our largest building downtown. Just this
Mm. Didn't
androgynous
know
head,
that.
male nor female, it's about 30 feet high, and
Hmm.
done in sort of a manner that makes you think of computers and digitalization. There it is. There's the ugly token of this age that we're living in. That's the end goal, and it begins in the late '80s with
Hmm.
cheap imitations of the works of Jean-Paul Sartre and Jacques Derrida. That they were calling themselves radical feminists. You can think of cultural Marxism. It's all political correctness. It's all political correctness. It's been hijacked. Germaine Grenier, I believe she was the author of The Second Sex, and I believe she would be considered second wave radical feminism. She stood up against this insanity. And in much graphic terms that I won't repeat, I won't steal her thunder, but she basically said, I don't care if you have your penis removed surgically, you're not a woman.
Mhm.
She became an outcast.
Yeah.
So the third wave radical feminists of today in a manner of speaking, apparently they don't honor their own traditions. Germaine Greer, you're out. And as a former U.S. representative who I now believe is a part of Trump's administration, I shared a great speech she gave, which was shortly after the day celebrating women, Women's Celebration Day, pointing out, isn't it wonderful all these speeches politicians are making, and yet they choose a man to represent women, right? A transgender woman. They roll
Yeah.
out a man, and she says there is no act of greater hatred and indifference toward women than redefining us as an active imagination in someone's mind. We're not a real person anymore. So really LGBTQI2S plus, and that's where the alphabet has
Okay. Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Every judge and every crown prosecutor and every police officer has to give service to that mantra and LGBTQI2S. And they sometimes get it wrong, but they know they have to say the mantra. I say it because it's accurate. This is the agenda. This is what it
Yeah.
wants to be known as. LGBTQI2S plus. The plus is anything goes. And I'm going to land it where I wanted to take this. You're mentioning that we have the challenge of morality. Who gets to set
Yeah.
moral codes? And if we look to the Old Testament, we see there is a separation
Mhm.
between church and state. Yahweh makes it very clear, King Saul, it's not up to you to carry out the rights of the priest. That was Samuel's job. I'm upset that you did that. We have a separation. I'm just going to move forward. The separation I believe in. I understand there are moral issues
Mhm.
and it's a criminal code. And there are acts that the government has determined are criminal, and there is a subset between them, including culpable homicide. The Old Testament, thou shalt not murder.
Mhm.
Criminal Code of Canada, we have all kinds of varieties of culpable homicide that go from manslaughter, negligent homicide to premeditated or first degree murder. Should the state go after people who for committing adultery? My opinion is no. There's a division of a moral issue that doesn't meet the threshold of state intervention. I'm not an advocate for theocracy. I'm an advocate for free speech. And I acknowledge that often it is the pulpit that informs us of our moral values.
Yeah.
But we have a state that, in addition to being criminal, is 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 blatantly immoral in its defense and enforcement of what I would argue is encroaching now, moving us towards pedophilia. When you're grooming
Mhm.
children to play dress up in front of a man dressed in a negligee because that gives him sexual satisfaction. I mentioned that's the encroachment in Section 153 of the Criminal Code of Canada. We're an unlawful state. But you mentioned Bill C9. So if you back up to my statement that's on the radio shorter, um, uh, vision,
Yeah.
my purpose for being. I mentioned the criminalization of liberty.
Yeah.
Perhaps I qualified. That's been de facto until now, meaning they're doing it by warping law, by calling free speech mischief, or in the case of the Coots Four, even calling free speech conspiracy to commit murder. That's a warping of law. That's a diluting of statutes. But we're moving forward now where the criminalization of free speech will be lawful. It might be immoral, but they'll have the law for it. You mentioned
Yeah.
Bill C. So there you go. Bill C2, Bill C8, Bill C9, these legislative arcs that Prime Minister Carney, the banker, the chairman of Brookfield Corporation, is bringing into this country. There you're going to have the law finally catching up to what has been the unlawful behavior of the judicial system. So that's where we're landing. But if I go back to the question of morality,
Mhm.
you presented as that, absolutely. You could say, well, their morals are inclusiveness, which is totally deceitful and hypocritical. Inclusiveness is about excluding incorrect people, incorrect ideas, but they have a pretense of a moral system. But really, this is about the absolute deconstruction of morals. And remember, you
Yeah.
go back to the
Yeah.
lessons of construction. We're going to the demarcation. We're going to call evil good. We're going to call good evil. And then we're just going to dissolve into
Yeah.
chaos. That's
That's
the
what's happening. Yeah.
that's the goal.
That's yeah, that's
It,
where we're at. I mean, it all like a lot of these people, these transhumanists, I mean, some are atheists. I mean, everyone has a different belief system, but yeah, like we've I mean, in general, like the Canadian government's completely departed from not every individual. I'm generalizing, but I mean, yeah, biblical morality is they want nothing to do with that. That's why, like, yeah, it's lawfare. Like Mark Miller, Sean Fraser, I mean, Mark Carney. I mean, they know what they're doing. Like they know they have to. They've got to snake it, is what I call it, right? Like it's if they were given full free reign to do what they want, I mean, man, we'd be gone, right? Like they don't want any, like the agenda is moving forward in alignment with everything that you're saying, and Derek Reimer is just a victim of that, right? I mean, it's and others, especially like Bible believing pastors. I mean, if you're going to preach biblical morality, like what and what are you going to do about the Islamic community, right? The Muslims, they're certainly in agreement with a lot of the moral issues I would say the Christian pastors are raising as well. I
And
mean,
to, but I visited the Saddletown Library some months ago. A young man named Dallas has taken up the mantle from Derek, and he's organizing the protest against reading with royalty. And he has a remarkable way of going ahead with that. And I walked into Saddletown Library about half an hour before a scheduled reading with royalty program and just found no evidence that it was taking place and couldn't find the hips of the drag queen go swish, swish, swish. And of course, this is the typical portrait of what they call a drag queen. It's not the burlesque drag queen. And when we
okay.
hear from burlesque drag queens, we hear them saying, I wouldn't do what I do in front of children. So I don't know what they're doing in libraries, but I wouldn't do that. It's not what it is. The portrait of the drag queen, it's always a man with a beard, right? So there's your mockery, again, the cheap imitation of Jacques Derrida's deconstruction, right? Which Jacques Derrida, God bless, he's probably rolling in his grave now. But this cheap imitation of womanhood, it's the complete deconstruction. What that U.S. representative was saying, this is so demeaning and hateful towards women. You've turned us into the active imagination of a typically white male. Let's be honest. Look at the celebrated people of the drag queen story hour movement. Whether we're talking Organ Moshe, from British Columbia and Little Miss Hot Mess, they're white males. Okay, that's who the power is going to. It's the complete disenfranchisement of women. We can talk about the history of the oppression of women. This is just ramping that up, and they end up
Yeah.
being mutilated at age 14 because some ideas that are put into their head, tapping into normal teenage angst, which I have to say, I didn't know this as a kid growing up. As a guy, we don't know this stuff. For some women, it's an absolute horror going through adolescence for any number of reasons. And they go into a high school bathroom mortified that another girl will walk in as they're taking care of their situation in a stall because of the onset of menarche and menstruation, right? They don't
Mhm.
want to be doing that in there, but they have to be in there. They don't want a girl walking in there, let alone a guy
Yeah.
who's
No, I
exploiting
mean,
so that he can go.
yeah. This is like my encouragement to leaders is like start anyone that has any kind of conviction, at least biblically speaking, you need to actually start standing up and playing a part in this, right? And just saying, no, we don't want this. Like you are allowed to say, like, I don't support this, right? I don't want this pushed and like you touched on too in universities. And this is how you change, like it's social engineering, right? That's all it is, because you
No,
change.
human sexuality without morals is just not a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, what are the boundaries, right? Yeah.
And I have my shortcomings there. This is not about judging people for their sexual immorality. My role as a critic of the judicial system,
Sure.
I'm also double-hatted as a protester at Reading with Royalty events. My name is on a watch list. The police have me on a watch list, and many other of my colleagues.
Oh,
And
I'm
so
sure.
even go beyond the safe and inclusive access bylaw, right? They even go beyond the limit. As much as that is a violation of the
But
charter, they even go beyond that. Now your name is on a watch list and you can't be here regardless of what you're doing because of who you are. I've had police lie to my face because I walked by a library on my way to the protest. Dallas had set up outside 100 meters. He wants to
mhm.
be compliant, but he's courageous and he's brave and he's loving.
Yeah.
And he's got a remarkable calling there. Because I walked by, two police officers approached me making out like they're going to arrest me. We understand you're in breach. You have conditions and you're in breach. And I said, I've matured in my responses to police. I think I'm
Yeah.
a little
Good.
jealous in the way I would talk to them. I've toned that down, but they are lying. And I just said, officer, I don't mean to be discourteous. I'll say good day to you, but I'm not answering any of your questions. Don't
Well, you
enter
don't
the
have to. Yeah. Yeah.
enter.
You actually don't have to. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Not that they know that, but you're right about that. Of course, I don't
Well,
have
they
to.
don't. Yeah. You don't. Yeah. They can, this whole this is the one thing, like, honestly, if it was up to me, again, with for up to me, like I would have law-abiding citizens have the right to bear arms. I mean, I know that's not the case here, but like it's a total imbalance of power. That's one thing I like about 2A rights, but that's a whole other conversation. We don't have to get into that. But again, yeah, walking around with your handgun and your badge, it's like, buddy, like, man, I'm not see, for me, I'm not intimidated by any of that. If you know what you're doing is right, like you mentioned, you are in the right. Like you have that power, even though like you might suffer for it, which you will in this system in today's world. If you're going to take a stand, you will. I mean, you will be attacked in some form, right? Like, but
So I want to land on 2 points here. Why did I bring
sure.
up Mahmoud Murrah? Why did I bring up the public safety unit? And by the way, the public safety unit will take pictures of people, they create a file, they hand it over to the hate crimes unit. I listened to a constable messenger. It's an interesting name, right? The
Hmm.
medium is the messenger. He's testifying in court talking about how he was spying on Derek Reimer, but what he presents it as is that, well, I'm on Facebook looking for hate bias. He's looking for signs of, okay, why is hate bias a crime, by the way? Okay, never, let's go with it. He's looking for hate bias. Oh, with the hate
Hmm.
bias letter that you were given at the police academy. And this is just a smokescreen. No, he was handed a file on a political target named Derek Reimer, and he does whatever he can do to find something that might stand up in court against him on Facebook. So it's just spying and surveillance. But why did I mention that? I had some comments on it on
Hmm.
Facebook. Somebody came back with, I'm not going to blame officers for dressing the way they were told to. All right. Okay. That's fine. Who says this is about blame? I'm an honest critic. This is my analysis. This is what they did. They stood there with assault rifles facing off against Hindu, Muslim, and Sikh children. How does blame come into this? This is honest
Hmm.
analysis. And well, they're just following their orders. That's the ever loving problem, folks, is that the police in this country will continue to follow their orders. So
Yeah.
this mindset is I don't want to be involved. I get it. I get it. People have not found their courage. Then we have another element from the Christian church. Oh, well, you should read what Peter says about respecting authority. Folks, a false balance is an abomination before the
Yeah.
Lord. It's impossible for me to respect a false abomination. And that is the overarching weight of the judicial system. Yes, there's good individuals. Justice Fradsham found Derek Reimer not guilty of mischief
Yeah.
and created disturbance. I don't know the man of faith, but God is pleased with that outcome. Here's a judge who followed the law and brought a just balance to his evaluation of
It's
both the
good.
evidence and the arguments he was presented by both sides.
Yeah.
So I give credit where
Definitely.
due, but the overarching weight, the overarching weight of the judicial system is they're diluting statutes to find innocent men guilty. Doesn't need to be repeated systematic behavior. She didn't need
Yeah.
to for physical safety. You're hollowing out the weights. Oh, well, Shane, a false balance. That's talking about commerce. Read Leviticus. All of your weights, all of your scales, all of your balances, all of your legal verdicts must be just. So there's the written law informing that trope, that metaphor is not just about commerce. God is using the idea of commerce, the commodity you're purchasing on a scale, and the unjust vendor has hollowed out the weight. So you're paying more for less
Hmm.
applies to the
Yeah.
judicial system. If you don't think God gets angry at the judicial system, read the fifth chapter of Hosea. O ye
Of
princes of
course.
Israel,
Yeah.
all responsible for justice, I've
Hmm.
seen the traps and snares you have laid for my people in the little towns.
Yeah.
Ephraim, your secrets are not hidden from me. That's an affectionate nickname, actually, for the Northern Kingdom. My point is, that reads well in Alberta. All the snares and traps you've laid out in Coots, you have laid out in Calgary for Derek Reimer. So, we sometimes hear this message that we are not to criticize the judicial system. And it goes to Derek inviting pastors to a night of prayer for him that he knows disagrees with him, but in the name of unity and hearing all voices. So I pushed back a little bit on this message, which was, we shouldn't be criticizing the judicial system. And I just said simply this: if God didn't want me to be a critic of the judicial system, he really gave me the wrong education and experience.
No, it's
So
good.
academic, eight
Yeah.
years, 7 years, 1 year Arizona State University, hard sciences, humanities, and fine arts, at a time when I think it was still possible to get a truly liberal education. I
Hmm.
had superb professors. superb across the spectrum. They didn't tell me who to vote for. I didn't even know who they were voting for. The
Yeah,
politics was limited to the small politics of the boys' network for the most part. So I'm thankful for that. But then I was also an egghead. And there becomes a little detachment from reality in that, a little too much preoccupation with the postmodern ideas. And so I joined the armed forces, and they bring another balance, which is straight analysis, prioritization, operational thinking. So
it's
with
good.
these elements combined, I make a suitable critic. A
Yeah,
suit,
you're great.
the English,
You,
that's teaching you how to analyze text. And the
yeah.
armed forces career, that's teaching you what really matters. That's just academic. Go with what matters that has implications. So it's a good balance. And so I'll say it again. If God didn't want me to be a critic of the judicial system, boy, he gave me the wrong life experience.
Well, you know what? You'd make a good politician, actually. You're bringing up because you bring up things in a way that they'll be able to receive. They'll have to because it again, it's a battle between like that's why they want to change the law. They want to change it's a battle on definitions. Okay, if I can put it that way. Semantics. They want to redefine words. It's the inverse, right? Like you mentioned too, right? What was traditionally right is now becoming wrong, and then what was traditionally wrong is now becoming right. And I mean, I think everyone would agree with that. It's just that in terms of that's what's actually happening. But again, it's and then the law is being twisted, and they want to change it so that they can, yeah, they can basically snuff out people like you, me, or Pulowski, Derek Reimer, anyone that at least speaks out against their agenda. And to me, it's like you have no right to do that. Like Canada was not set on those foundations. But see, now that it's we're carrying on in years here, if you don't have people criticizing and pushing back, these people are aggressive and they're just going to keep going until some people start saying no, we don't want this. And that's your power. That's what more people need to say, we don't want this. And you need to do it in an intelligent way. Like use the system. We still have a system that, if you use it in the right manner, and I encourage lawyers to start standing up for people, right? Like, why are you letting the rainbow flag religious government sanctioned agenda, like this is not right. To me, I call it a form of constitutional subversion. And some of these politicians, I would argue, and actually label them as a form of terrorism, especially against biblical morality. I mean, I can play with words too, right? Like I can make an argument. Like you can counter it, but like to me, it's like they don't realize it goes both ways, guys. You can't just take a position and demonize everyone else. That goes both ways. I can do the same thing to you, and you can do the same thing to me. So how are we gonna, like, at the very least, like, not that I advocate really for neutrality, but like, at least before, I think there was somewhat of a neutral system in place, maybe in your day too, like when you got an education, yeah, like you're allowed to come to your own conclusions, right? But now governments are basically telling you, no, this is the way you're going to think. And see, that's totalitarian, that's a dictatorship on,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I entered the university system with an evangelical Christian
yeah.
background. And I sometimes, not recently for whatever reason, I read some of my old essays and I could see where I was stretching the role of a literary critic by sort of bringing in evangelical Christianity. Yeah, it doesn't really belong here. I'm kind of, yeah,
Oh,
that's, I get it. That's what I
yeah,
should do. I didn't get
yeah,
pushback with that. I got gently steered. It's not really credible. I don't think William Faulkner was when he referenced to Judeo-Christianity, it's sort of ironic for him.
yeah.
So in other words, I wasn't getting chastised for incorrect thinking. I was getting corrected, and the scholarship is a little lightweight there. If
Okay.
you, it wasn't driven by an anti-Christian bias. I don't
Okay.
think the professor has stated his views. He did have issues with Christianity, but it was credible scholarship. So this is as late as I'm going to say 1990 in the English department of UVic. It's still possible to get credible scholarship. That I can't even imagine where it's at now. More than
Hmm.
years later, you will get pushback. And in
Yeah.
other disciplines of that era, people were being told you can't do a master's on that. Yeah, you can't do a
Yeah.
master's in political science on the role of the Christian church in Canada. That's not going to work for you.
But
So
see, I don't get that. Yeah.
I may have been, I was blessed with really remarkable scholars and
It's good.
professors. So I have to admit that it's happening even then. By 1990, there is a pushback against, anything to do with the Christian faith.
Of
And,
course. Yeah.
and the end goal here, though, go back to LGBTQI2S plus.
Yeah.
That's the love is love,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah. Yeah.
moving
Yeah. Yeah.
boundaries, moving gender boundaries. We're removing age boundaries. There's your normalization of pedophilia. Some
Yeah.
say the black and brown chevrons, that's a reference to necrophilia and bestiality. Quite possible. That's an interpretation. The agenda is going there. So
Yeah.
it's amorality. It's not so much that they're going to determine what is, although they do that through speech codes. That's their sort of their self-righteous fervor comes from, I use the word, how dare I?
Yeah.
That's the depth of the moral concern. But really it's a moral chaos that we're moving towards.
And I'm glad you're the right person to talk about this. Honestly, like you should. I'm gonna follow a little bit more of what you're doing because you should speak on all these things because you do it in a very, I'm gonna say, politically correct manner from a Christian perspective. And it's really good. It's really needed. It's really needed today. Like someone that can articulate things in the way that you do. And you're 100% right. And also I want to make it clear too, like I am not like a holy man standing in judgment over everyone else. Like but I will say that I'm of that conviction. Like I look at the things, like if I could project all the things that I thought of that are not in alignment with my convictions, man, there's a lot. And I just want to make that clear, right? But I'm of the conviction and I'm working on myself to walk in that direction, and God be the judge, right? Because that's how I see it in my life. I'm a very slow learner in that respect, but I believe that it's the right path, and the morality expressed like in the New Testament is of the highest form. And just read it, like read it for what it is. And most of these people died for their faith too. They died. So ask yourself why. Like, I mean, and I mean, these words were not written by carnal-minded men. They were at one point, but then they transformed. And you have to ask yourself, it's truly amazing because when I read that, they didn't have a New Testament. They were living kind of like in this way, like, and they were genuinely transformed. And that brought an amazing power. Like even Paul himself talked about, he was an educated man, but he said that he came with a demonstration of the power of God, right? So that your faith wouldn't rest on like the wisdom of men, but on the demonstration of the power. Like there's so many interesting things said there. You could spend a lifetime studying the Bible. But anyway, I'll digress, man. But that's my conviction. I'm a work in progress. I'm not the judge, but I know where I stand, and I just it's that's and I know what my convictions are, and I'll
You
be
know,
judged by that. I believe I'll be judged by that standard, like
it, it's
for better or for worse.
it's interesting, and I've had these talks with Dallas. We both share a similar interest in certain types of music.
Okay.
And I talked to him about how, in my opinion, John Lennon was assassinated, and here's why. Yeah, Mark
Okay.
David Chapman was the trigger man. But more to the point here, in the last year of his life, John Lennon gave an interview in which he started talking about Sunday school and the teachings of Jesus and the parables and how, now I get it now. I get what he was saying.
Yeah.
And he went on to say, it's probably easier for us to see hypocrisy in our neighbor than to see it in ourselves. And I
Yeah.
think it's probably a given that I am a hypocrite and that I'm the last person in the position to really understand my own version of hypocrisy. But this is what I
I
would
like
say.
that.
I'll say two things. Number one, what we see in Canadian people is a lack of courage, and we see that in Christians and
Yeah.
non-Christians. We saw that on full display during the COVID era.
Yeah.
It's subconscious, the fear. And our conscious mind accepts the justification, oh, well, I have to respect government, the Christian might say, or
Yeah.
or others of different faiths or beliefs, they might say, well, no, the government they're right. They don't have it. They're learning as they go. They mean well. We launch on these fantasies because we're not ready to take on the fact, no, our government is malevolent and wicked. That's a tough thing to wake up to. And I think the
Mhm.
subconscious fear there doesn't get expressed consciously, but it's probably there. If you're a Christian and you don't want to join Derek Reimer, you don't even want to show up in the courtroom, let alone protester reading with royalty. We're all called to different things, and God will equip you with the peace and courage in your
Hmm.
call. But there is an element that you're lacking courage, and you'll go to the scriptures as your smokescreen. You won't deal with your fear. You'll land on a scripture that tells you, I need to stay out of this, according to this scripture. You know, folks, we've really come to a sorry pass. If we need to find the right scripture verse to know, we should stand up when teenage girls are having a muscle cut out of their arm, having their vagina inverted and rendered useless, stuffed with that muscle to become a useless dangling appendage in the name of gender affirming care. And you need a scripture to tell you to stand up
Yeah.
against that. We've got a problem. There's a
Yeah.
problem here, and likely it is a lack of courage.
Yeah, no, 100%. And of course, the lack of a moral compass, like for our government officials, it's absolutely shameful and despicable. And to me, like it's not all of them, but y'all like should be absolutely ashamed of yourselves for pushing this. And you can persecute people all you want. It's not going to stop the voices being spoken against this, right? Because in the end, what I believe is that you're not going to escape. Like people seem to think there's a temporary safety in following like government propaganda, I'm going to call it. But in the end, you're not going to escape. Like to me, the ultimate judgment is what I believe. You will be called out for how you lived your life. If you tried to always take the path of least resistance, that's what'll be said on you, like things like that. But you know what? I'm going to digress here, Shane. I could talk about this kind of stuff for hours, but I really appreciate your insights, man. You're a very intelligent man. I respect your views. I would listen to what you have to say, actually, more than just our time here. I think you're really important for what's going on in Alberta. So, yeah, and I'm excited to see what God's doing in your life, in your work as you align with people like Pulowski and Derek Reimer. And it's just to encourage others to, yeah, like just like face the fear for what it is. I want to talk to that too. Uh, like it's a choice. I believe everything is a choice, right? You make a choice, and then if you see a need, fulfill it. Like that's like you talk about calling, and people wonder, well, what's my calling? Well, what's in your heart? Like that's what I would ask them. What do you have a passion for? And it starts out as a little seed, but then you grow it, you feed it. It's like if you want to be a good guitarist. Okay, you say that, but are you willing to do the work? Oh, no, I'm not. Well, you're never going to become a good guitarist, then, are you? Like people need to think of it like see a need, have a passion, have a desire, and then put in the work. It's like if you want to be a bodybuilder, you want to get some muscle. Well, you're gonna have to go to the gym, right? Oh, I don't want to do that. Well, then you're never gonna go anywhere, right? Anyway, but that's how I gotta wrap it up. But again, I want to people can find you. You're on YouTube and you're on Facebook. Radio Shorter, right? Like that's where people can at least reach out to you on Facebook, right? And
Yeah, as far as YouTube goes, and I
or is it
don't
not?
know, and this tends to speak to few people, has been my experience. Long before Radio Shorter, there was a fictional series that I created by assembling, borrowing, if you like, pieces of cinema, sometimes a good TV show, classical music, pop music, rock music, sometimes Larry Norman, although I got pushed back from copyright on a Larry Norman song. But my point is, it was a fictional series. I
Hmm.
think self-explanatory. That is on YouTube, and you'll find that under Radio Free Canada America. It's difficult to search for because it's pushed down in the feeds. And eventually I was outright banned. But that's a fictional series, but it's dealing with similar issues. I call it a romantic and spiritual narrative set in today's politically correct age. Radio Free Canada America. I don't, their radio
I'll put it
short
there.
now, as the
Yeah.
non-fictional analysis and criticism, is only on Facebook right now in that format.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And
And that
that's good. No, that's good. Yeah, I can highlight that one for sure. Yeah, it's good because that's, it's part of the biodigital convergence, right? I mean, you can talk to anyone in the world pretty well if they're willing to. Yeah, anyone in the world, right? We're all connected now. It's very, very interesting times. But of course, in Derek Reimer, oh, one thing I wanted to just pull up. Let's just share the screen just real quickly here. Um, okay, hold on here. Yeah, I'll share this one here. I'll just see. Yeah, okay, right here. I know he wanted to funding the fight. I don't, you can see the screen, right? Like
Yeah,
it's for Derek here, so you can help. Obviously, he needs money, he needs some help. So I would if you can, I would donate a little bit to his cause. I'm not sure exactly what his whole financial situation is, but it's called Funding the Fight. .ca/pastor underscore Derek. I'll put all the links in the write-up too, so you can donate to him there. And also, I just want to pull up well, this is his
absolutely.
website. Yeah, it's called Mission 7. So this is what he does, right? Like you got some like he's out there doing things, right? For the conviction of his faith. So, I mean, I respect that, right? I mean, he's out there helping the poor. He's talking about the message
Absolutely.
of Jesus Christ. Yeah, and I mean, you can see what he's doing. And then he also works. I mean, like that's like Paul style, right? I mean, he's working, he's drywalling, he's doing this. Like this guy's doing a lot. So if you feel like alignment with him, I mean, obviously the money helps. Considering what I mean, they wage financial lawfare on guys like him, and it's tough. So I just wanted to conclude with that, and I'll come back to hold on. Okay. Yeah. So, and anyway, yeah, that's where you can find Derek. And of course, he's on Facebook as well. I don't think he's on X. I haven't seen him on X, but Facebook's a good place. But like you said, he's not allowed to, he's not on social media right now. So, yeah. So then people are just helping him out right here and there. And of course, Shane Roberts is the guy to talk to about Derek to me. Like, yeah, like, it's excellent. It's excellent. Actually, I almost view you like kind of like a Jordan Peterson, like I don't know if that's a good thing in your world, but I mean you articulate things in a way similar to him to me, and I appreciate your thinking because it's intelligent, right? And it's needed. It's
And Jordan Peterson, and there may be a few others, but he was the only professor I knew of 10 years ago who was speaking out publicly against
yeah,
business.
yeah, exactly. And they come after him too, right?
He's a
Yeah,
gift to us. He rightly predicted that Justin's Bill C-16 would criminalize pronouns. You had the legal establishment. That's not what it says. They're completely ignoring the cultural historical context of Bill C-16. And by 2019 in British Columbia, you had a higher level court telling a father, if you call your daughter a she, you're going to jail. So 3 years later, there we have the criminalization of pronouns, but it's uneven, and that's
it's,
typical of a tyranny that they apply their own laws unevenly. So you don't know when it's going to be criminalized. You could be next for
yeah,
mistreating someone. So Peterson got it right.
yeah, 100%. And like it's insane, and like they don't see like it's woke tyranny, I call it, if you want to generalize it. Like what else is it? That's what it is. It's like you guys are it's on the opposite side of the spectrum, but it's becoming a woke rainbow flag, government sanctioned like dictatorship. That's what you're facing in Canada, basically. So it's yeah, and like you said, it's thought police, it's hate speech, all this stuff, and then the fact you can't post news on Facebook, like what is that, right? Like I mean, like see that's a they want to control the narrative, right? See, and with X now, one thing like it. I mean, you got to be careful on X because it's a war zone. It's a digital war zone, but it's everything, right? Everything is out there. But like in Canada, they want to control the narrative, right? And of course, you've heard like everyone calls the CBC the Communist Broadcasting Corporation. That's what I've heard say. Because I mean, that's state funded propaganda, right? That's the story they want you to hear. But it's the furthest thing from reality to me. So anyway, I'm going to digress, Shane. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, thanks for all your weigh-ins. My interview style is kind of conversational, so I kind of chime in there too. Some people like that, some people don't, but that's just my style. But yeah, my heart prayer is out for Derek too. And I would encourage law enforcement officers, I respect you guys for the discipline of what you do, but also be careful like when you make the right choice, right? Because for me, I would have nothing to do with arresting Derek Reimer. Nothing to do with that. I would not want my name associated with that, anything to do with going on with any of that kind of stuff. And that's why I can't serve under that system. I cannot do it. Like as it is today. But I'm all about I respect the discipline of what law enforcement officers there's some of them I really, really respect too. I just want to make that clear. But I also, yeah, like yourself too, right? With the things that you said. So it's something to think about, right? It's like, are you willing to arrest people like this because the government's telling you to? I mean, I know it's your job and your livelihood, but that would make me question, am I really willing to do this, right? Because you will be accountable for this. It doesn't matter. You can say it's your job or blah, 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 but that's not going to fly. In the end, that's not going to exonerate you from what you chose to do. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks a lot, Shane, for your time. And is there any closing remarks you want to leave us with, or is that pretty well it?
Yeah, for years now, Derek Reimer has fed the poor through Mission 7, downtown Calgary on Stephen Avenue. He continues to do that. This is another thing that the state, the corrupt governments of Canada in all orders, right down to the municipal level, hate. They hate the feeding of the poor. Right now, Calgary Police Service is cleaning up the streets. They call it social disorder. They're cleaning up social disorder. They also harass people who feed the poor until they stop or have to move. So this is the one thing that they have also hated about Derek Reimer. He's feeding the poor. And Crown Prosecutor Matt Delatovich, during a hearing on varying the conditions in which Derek Reimer wanted to use his community service as part of his house arrest, meaning Mission 7. They didn't want him at Mission 7 anymore. Crown Prosecutor Matt Delatovich said to Justice Karen Mulley, Your Honor, I caution the court. We must remember that it is Mission 7 that brought Derek to the attention of this court in the first place. And what was he doing at Mission 7? Feeding the poor. So, folks, as Canadians, factor that into your equation as you
Yeah.
assess Canadian government and what their motive is.
Well,
You'd
thanks a
think
lot, Shane.
you'd think he'd get a letter of commendation from the city. Thank you for helping us by feeding the poor. No, it's the opposite. They hate the feeding of the poor. I'm not using that as a sentiment or a feeling. It's when Jesus says a man cannot serve two masters, for he will hate the one and love the other. Jesus is talking about a choice and a preference reflected in your decisions. And the choice police are making when they harass people for
Mhm.
feeding the poor, they're carrying out a version of hatred towards those who feed the poor. You're hating it, officer, by following your orders. That's what they
I
do.
agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Thanks very
Oh,
much for this.
thanks very much, Shane. Yeah, no, I appreciate all your commentary, your insight. It's great and it's well needed. And yeah, we'll keep soldiering onward is the way I'm going to put it. Thanks for your time, Shane, and take care. God bless you. And God
And you
bless Derek Reimer and Pulowski and all those who are doing the work of the Lord is how I'm going to say it. So thank you very much.